Hi everyone, it's Liam here from Rating the Races. So we have Aintree, obviously culminating in the Grand National on Saturday, where we've already put up our 4 for that race. I think they're all going to take their chance, which is great, and I think they've all got massive chances, to be fair. If you haven't watched that video, you can find that in our YouTube videos. That's been available for everyone for a little while now. So obviously with these analysis videos, they're released earlier. We've done the early analysis already for all 3 days, and this video will be released to Premium and Pro members just after I've finished recording, whilst free members will see it on the morning of the race, and so on and so forth. So, who do I like in the first race tomorrow at Aintree? It's Impere Pass. I actually believe he's a proper Grade 1 horse. I'm not totally convinced with a lot of the others in this race, especially the likes of Rabao, the Kaluki Kid, Boomball, Mark of Gold, Facile Mode. If any of those 5 were to win it, there's been a few that have really disappointed. Now, I do really rate Impere Pass. Some of his efforts have been really good, finishing second a couple of years ago behind Tearpoo over hurdles. Tearpoo is a real good stayer. Finishing second to Stateman, another good effort. Beating Bob Ollinger and Langadan here, another good effort. Beating Langadan at Sandown, yeah, all fine. Then came out and won a couple of races really impressively. Beginners Chases and a Grade 1 Forheen Novice Chase. Then went to Leopardstown and had Ballyburn to beat, and I kind of feel that it all went wrong. He didn't jump with any fluency whatsoever. But if you run it again and he jumped much better, which I think he will. I don't think it was his jumping. He doesn't have jumping issues. It was just something on the day. If you run it again, he finishes second to Ballyburn, and we're all like, okay, we finished second at Ballyburn. Ballyburn should have also won at Cheltenham, but made one of those terrible mistakes. I think if you run the Brown Advisory again, Ballyburn wins that. So I feel that Impere Pass really should be coming into this off the back of a second behind Ballyburn. And was much better than Croke Park, and is much better than Croke Park. He's probably the biggest Irish danger, on the basis that he'd done pretty well and then finished second in that race behind Ballyburn, whilst Django Bay went off 5-1 for the just a 5-runner Arkle. What was that? What was he? Joint second favourite with Loda Sud. Majborough went off 1-2. That race fell apart. Django Bay was flat out for most of that race before running on strongly and picking up the pieces in a race that fell apart in front of him. But the fact that he was flat out, that's going to have left its mark, surely. I know the step up in trip should suit, but I feel that he's probably left his race at Cheltenham, in my opinion, whereas Impere Pass didn't do that. He's come straight here. Craig Park has come straight here. Gidley Park has also come straight here. And I just feel that might catch Django Bay out tomorrow. And the fact that I don't believe he's quite as good as Impere Pass. If you put Impere Pass in the Arkle, he probably goes off a shorter price than Django Bay. He probably goes off second favourite behind Majborough. And yeah, I feel that Impere Pass is the one to beat here. And I think he'll probably go off favourite, not Django Bay. That's just my opinion. So yeah, we're already on Impere Pass at 3s. He's still available at 3s at the time of recording, but you can see that many of the bookmakers are just starting to shorten him. Moving on to the 220 at Aintree, the Juvenile Grade 1. And without Lalamba in this, it opens it up. It really does. I mean, the favourite now is Put Your Hands Together. Now, Put Your Hands Together was a very impressive winner of the Fred Winter. However, that was a handicap, and maybe he just got in ridiculously low off 130. And he's now up against better horses. If we actually look at his handicap mark, he was running off 130, so he carried 11.6. My selection in this race, we're going to try and get him beat by reversing the form a fair bit as well, with a horse called Mercia. Now, Mercia went into that race rated 136, so gave £6 to Put Your Hands Together. Because of it not being a handicap, and because it's now she gets the fillies allowance, she's suddenly significantly better off at the weights. So she was giving 6, she's now getting 5-7. So she's £13 better off. And I actually thought Mercia ran well for a long way. Probably lacked a little bit of experience. That run, I think, will really have helped Mercia. I think she's good enough to get much, much closer, if not reverse the form with and Put Your Hands Together. The fact that Put Your Hands Together is being so well supported, that's encouraging in terms of, yeah, the British horses probably aren't much. The likes of Live Conti and number 5, Filibustering. Yeah, maybe they're not that much, which I don't believe they are, to be honest. It's going to be an Irish horse that wins this race, I feel. Mercia is the one that I definitely like in this race, with that big weight pool against Put Your Hands Together. And she's a nice price, to be fair. She's available at 17-2. You can comfortably get 8s about Mercia. I think she'll finish second at worst, potentially beaten by Put Your Hands Together. If she can reverse the form with Put Your Hands Together, I think she wins the race. And yeah, very interesting to see, obviously, them decide to run Mercia here rather than in a handicap. They've put her back into Grade 1 company, and it doesn't look the strongest of Grade 1s, to be fair. So Mercia at 17-2 is a bet in the Juvenile handicap hurdle. She is one that we haven't tipped up earlier on in the week. So we then move on to the Grade 1 at Aintree, the 3 mile 1 furlong race. I'm going to take a bit of a chance on one here that I want to be given a very, very quiet ride out the back, and come through late. And I actually feel he's got the right jockey on. Although people don't like this jockey, I actually believe this is how he rides his best races. And that's Gaelic Warrior. Stepping up massively to back up to 3 mile over fences. And I kind of feel that might be what he needs. Some of his efforts over hurdles were pretty good over this sort of trip, including when finishing second to Imperial Pass at Cheltenham in the Ballymore. That was a good effort. Then went to Punchestown over 3 mile and actually won a Grade 1 by 10 lengths, beating Affordable Fury and Franciscan Rock. Now, okay, it's probably a weak Grade 1. Embassy Gardens was in that race. He was way back in 6th. Then when he went chasing, he beat the subsequent Gold Cup winner, I Know the Way You're Thinking, over 2 mile 3. He then beat Il Était Tom over 2 mile 3. This is all really good form. And again, I Know the Way You're Thinking was back in 3rd. Before unseating at Leopardstown in a 2-runner affair against Factorfile, he went a 4-7 favourite that day against Factorfile, who on that day was actually having its optimum trip. They then dropped him back in trip, and I think that's caught them out. They dropped him back for the Arkle, and because he won it, they went, oh, maybe we've got a 2-miler here. And he's just found things happening a bit quick for him at Punchestown and Leopardstown the last twice. Back up in trip. I kind of would have preferred 2 mile 5, but you could argue that his best performance of his career was winning that Grade 1 at Punchestown over 3 mile. If the trip is actually, this 3 mile trip is what he needs, and yet he still has a bit of pace about him, Gaelic Warrior is probably the bet in this race, and I've talked myself into this one. If we have a look at 15-2, I think that's a price worth backing, because I don't like Grey Dawning, 0 from 3 at the track. Spillane's Tower, I'm not sure he wants this far. Or Hoisin PPF for his last 3 runs. I don't think Stage Star's good enough. We've got the beating of Embassy Gardens, Yellow and the Real Whacker shouldn't be good enough. I think Gaelic Warrior is the right horse in this race, and he is going to be a bet at 15-2. We then move on to the 330, which is the Grade 1 hurdle, and this race I am going to leave alone. Personally, if I was forced to have a selection in the race, I'd go for Lossiemouth over this trip. Constitution Hill has won over this trip. He's won this race before. He hit the front nicely when he was winning this race in 2023. He hit the front nicely, and the race report suggests he was unchallenged. I feel he was stopping at the line. I feel this was right at the end of his trip, and he was only beating Sharjah and Zanahir that day, and an old Epatante, I Like to Move It, and So Royale. Now, they're not good enough. They're not, none of them were good enough. Epatante was just coming towards the end of her career. Lossiemouth is the opposite. She's at the start of her career still, as is Woodhoo. They could certainly serve it up to Constitution Hill. If they're close enough, they might be able to outstay Constitution Hill. But it's all about the rides for me, and I don't want to chance it on that Paul Townend and Danny Gilligan are keeping their horses close enough to Constitution Hill. He will kick away at one point. They've got to try and really keep Constitution Hill, within a couple of lengths, so that they can start to pick up after the last, or even coming into the last and then after the last. But it's not a race I want to get involved in, because I'm not confident enough Paul Townend's going to give Lossiemouth the right to ride. So we'll move on. We'll go on to the 405 at Aintree, which is the Fox Hunters Chase. We do already have a selection in this race, and that is Lifetime Ambition. No changes with this. I feel he's very good. He was a very good chaser when he was actually running under rules. He got some really good form to his name. Rated as high as 158, and has been good since going point to pointing and hunter chasing. His second at Punchestown behind It's on the Line, I feel that bit of form I think would win this race. And I actually had an angle on that. He went off 1-2 for a point to point at Tina Helly, I think that's how you pronounce it. When Will It Go Ahead went off 4-1. Now, the point-to-point markets are generally spot on. And if something is significantly shorter than the others, they're normally better than the others. And I feel that Will It Go Ahead just ran above himself to win that day, and maybe Lifetime Ambition disappointed. Since then, obviously, Will It Go Ahead has gone to Cheltenham and franked that form by finishing third in the Hunter Chase at the Cheltenham Festival, behind Wonderwall and It's on the Line. I feel that's as good as he is, and I feel he actually wants that far. I think he wants 3 mile, 3 mile 1, 3 mile 2. This is only 2 mile 5, and I think that brings Lifetime Ambition really into it. I prefer that trip for Lifetime Ambition than I do for Will It Go Ahead, and that was my angle here, swinging it towards Lifetime Ambition over Will It Go Ahead. So yeah, if you're not on Lifetime Ambition, the 9-2 is absolutely fine. I think he will run a really big race here. And finally, there's only going to be one more. I'm not interested in that bumper. I don't have an angle into it. The final race we're looking at is the Red Rum Handicap Chase, where, if you've been following my videos, you know who I'm going to put up now. Based on Matata not running, because Matata doesn't run, it means everything is actually in the handicap proper, which is good. That means my selection is Sonsbury at 13-2. Hasn't achieved very much this season. Started off the season alright, finishing third in a Haldon Gold Cup, and then finishing third at Ascot in a Lay and Wheeler's Hurst Park Handicap Chase. Since then it's gone wrong. I feel they might have been targeting a return for this race, almost since the Haldon Gold Cup, or even that race at Ascot. They went, yeah, let's go back to Aintree, that's our big target. When he won at Aintree last year, he was a very impressive winner, comfortably beating Saint-Ouen, who at the time was very well handicapped. And I believe Saint-Ouen came out and won next time out. He didn't. He went to Punchestown and finished second. He has since won a handicap off 156. He was only rated 150 when he got beat by Sonsbury. Sonsbury is back down to that 130 mark. There's no negatives for me about Sonsbury. Just needs to get to the front under Harry Cobden, and I think he'll take all of the beating. I think we'll find that he is very well handicapped, whereas the likes of My Mate Mozzie and Primoz are probably well handicapped and will run good races, but I feel Sonsbury could show that actually he is rated, he is good enough to be rated as high as 140 or 140 that he went up to last year. It just hasn't quite worked. Well, they didn't win the race they wanted to at the beginning of the season, so they went, well, let's go back to Aintree then. He's only 7. They've got plenty of time with him. They didn't need to rush it and keep going at big races this season because they can come back next year at 7/8. So yeah, Sonsbury at 13-2 is my selection in the 440, the Red Rum Handicap Chase. And as I've just mentioned, there will be nothing in that bumper. Don't know. The mare's bumper, not a race I particularly like, and I'm not going to be getting involved. So a quick recap. Impere Pass, we're already on in the Novice Chase. I think he's the proper Grade 1 horse in the race, and Dango Bay may have left his race at Cheltenham. Mercia, I think, is going to finish at least second, and if the weight pool with Put Your Hands Together is enough, if she beats Put Your Hands Together, I think she wins the race. I talked myself into Gaelic Warrior, who the 3-mile trip could be perfect in the end. Has some really smart form. I think because he won the Arkle, they felt, oh, maybe we've got a champion chaser here. It hasn't worked, so they're going back up into it. That can certainly bring out the best in Gaelic Warrior. I don't want to touch the Aintree Hurdle. We're on Lifetime Ambition over this trip in the Fox Hunters, and finally we've just added Sonsbury as a selection in the handicap proper. I feel this has been the target since the beginning of the season, and think he will run a really nice race if he can get an easy lead.